looks like it's going
Oop,
to.
hold on. There we go. Awesome.
Cool. Well, we're a couple minutes early. Today we have tips to avoid liability with Melania. Um, and then also we're going to have our property ID rep come on, which is NHD company. They're going to go over a few things as well. But before we get started, I thought, every couple months we like to bring it to attention that we do have some, if you're looking at getting a mortgage license, or if you've even thought about it, we got a great program running through one of our partner wholesale lenders. And Paul's just going to come on and chat about that real quick in case you've been interested about possibly getting your NMLS license to, have some ancillary income, some other deal opportunities, things like that. It's a great, uh, you know, side business or main business, whatever you really want to do, that goes along well with your real estate license. So really, the more you know about mortgages, the better you become as a real estate agent as well, either on the buyer side or the listing side. It just really helps with pre-qualifying your buyers and knowing the whole process actually of how loans actually work. So, Paul, I'll let you go ahead and take it away and give us a little spiel on how this works.
Awesome. Thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. Um,
I'll have to share on my
oh, here
end.
we go. Thank you.
All right. Looks like we see it.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Paul DeMombro. I help Travis and Alicia with the loan division, and I'm also the director of training in our loan division as well. So Broker X training. Okay. So Broker X offers a 5-week course designed to transition individuals from unlicensed to licensed mortgage loan originator, supporting their entry into the wholesale mortgage lending industry. The program is aimed for fostering career growth and expanding market share for mortgage brokers, including comprehensive virtual training approved by the nationwide mortgage licensing system, which is also known as NMLS. Participants undergo 4 weeks of licensing prep and test prep with the on-course learning, followed by the final week of on-site experience at UWM in Michigan. They're one of our top lenders. They actually pay for the hotel and your flight when it comes to week 5 of the course. This path offers significant career opportunities, including flexibility and potential long-term success in helping borrowers secure home ownership. So, what to expect? Some of the stuff that they're gonna expect, like week 1, they're gonna review the program requirements. They're gonna do test prep, webinars, small group discussions, tutoring. There might be some things that you're just like, I just don't get it. What is it about? They'll do one-on-ones or group session. Week 3 to 4, they'll review material, help you with passing the tests, take practice tests. Then when you're ready to take the test, it's proctored, supervised to wherever you're located at. You schedule it, pay for it and so forth, and then you go and take your tests. Once you pass your tests, like I said, the last week you go to the 3-day success track program in person in Pontiac, Michigan, which is just outside of Detroit. I go there at least once or twice a year. I either learn something new or review myself. I tell you, there's all kinds of stuff that you can learn. Income prep, you can learn how to calculate tax return. You can learn all kinds of stuff. Processing, I'm telling you, they're really great programs, great lender as well. This is kind of like an example of their schedule. So weeks 1 and 2, they have webinars, boot camp. They got it's scheduled based on East Coast time. They also do study groups, tutoring, webinar. all kinds of stuff. So here are the guidelines for this program. According to the guidelines set by On-Course Learning and NMLS, participants in the Broker X program must, and I'm just going to tell you, this is very, very strict because NMLS, they monitor all this for you to get your license. So you got to attend all classes. Being late by more than 10 minutes or using a cell phone during a virtual class will result in losing eligibility for the program. A 10-minute grace period is allowed for late attendance. Like I said, they're very, very strict. Even when we go for continuing education once a year, they're super strict. I do it over Zoom, live, 8 hours. It's one time once a year. We knew it. I shut my cell phone off. I just pay attention because I just don't want to repeat the course. So for the duration of each virtual class, participants are required to keep their cameras on and they must log in using a desktop or laptop computer. So testing, you're responsible for obtaining and sharing your safe MLO test results. You share your results with the On-Course Learning and share information on this will be provided during orientation and the first 2 weeks. Attendance at Broker X requires everybody to register for and pass the safe MLO test. Failing the test will result in mandatory 30-day waiting period before you can retest. It's a federal law. So if you fail the test, you can't repeat the test for at least another month. This kind of gives you time to review. So if you fail, so what? I'm sure many of you took your real estate license twice, 3 times, 4 times, whatever it is. This, if you fail, just review it and get back on track. No biggie. So keep in mind, as soon as you pass the test, you can go to UWM week 5. So if you didn't pass your test, you got to pass your test first, and then you go to UWM. So it could be another 5 weeks before you can actually go to UWM if you have to repeat the test. So here are the costs for the Broker X training program: $250, which is exclusive rate payment, which is due in full to our partner, On-Course Learning, within 24 hours of submitting the enrollment form. Keep in mind, Travis, the program, the company, I'm sorry, Travis and the company, we're not charging you for the training program. They're charging you directly $250 for training itself, to take your tests, things like that. Like I said, success track training at UWM is included at no cost to you. Once you prove that you pass the test, you can actually go. So also separately, you must cover your own MLO test registration fee, which is about over $110. It depends what state. Right now, we do California and Texas. You can actually do both if you like. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to say the average background check, taking your test, it's going to be about $330. That's directly like the federal and state credit pull, things like that. If you're worried about your credit, talk to me directly. I can ease your situation. They're looking for fraud. They're looking for, things in the past that maybe that on your record. But other than that, in most cases, if you have a ding here and there, they'll just ask you a question. Hey, what is it? And explain it and what happened in summary, things like that. I want to say no big deal, but then again, everybody's got a different situation. Okay, here are the frequently asked questions. Yes, you're required to attend every class. Broker X program lasts 5 weeks with mandatory 1-hour virtual orientation held the week before. Attendance at every class is required. Week 1 and 2 feature and structure-led virtual course week. Week 3 and 4 are more of a self-paced exam preparation, and then week 5 involve the on-site training, additional training. Once you get your license, they're going to teach you processing, underwriting, put the file together, their system, things like that. You'll get started. Again, as in Michigan. You're not required to go in week 5 in Michigan. They do have virtual setting, but my recommendation, if you go on site, along with all that training, it's great motivation. You're going to hear other people talk about their experiences, and you will not be the only person that would be, I want to say inexperienced, I mean, you're just like learning. You're going to hear from experienced people how they do, their deals and things like that. Okay, after attending orientation and completing week one, you'll receive an email in week two with more information and a link to submit any personal detail to UWM needs to arrange for your travel. Please know on-site skill development is part of Broker Act and comes at no additional cost to you. So you will be responsible for obtaining your safe MLO test result and sharing verification with OnCourse Learning. You get your result, you send it to OnCourse, they'll verify, and then further details on this process will be provided during orientation and weeks 1 and 2 of the program. So I want to thank you so much for your attendance here. If you have any questions whatsoever about this, feel free to call me, text me, you can email me, we can book a Zoom appointment, and I'd be more than happy to answer additional questions. Last but not least, we do have somebody in the Broker X program as we speak. All right, thank you so much.
All right, thanks a lot. And yeah, and actually she is on the webinar right now, listening in. So hopefully that's going well. The NMLS, it is not nearly as crazy as getting your real estate license either. So while the test is, I guess, somewhat difficult, I mean, it's pretty similar to the real estate test, in my opinion, but it's only 20 hours of pre-licensing education. So you don't have to do, 150 hours or anything like that. It's 20 hours. It's nothing too crazy. So if it's something that you're interested in doing, hit up Paul and he can talk to you more about the Broker X program. This is not like our program. This is through UWM, something they offer, and they're offering the discounted rate through On-Course Learning, which is a nationwide reputable education company for mortgages. So you don't have to worry about anything there either. So if you have questions, you can throw them in the chat, or again, just hit up Paul separately. So we'll go ahead and roll in now to the main part of the meeting today. So we have Glennis with Property ID. Glennis, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning. Thank you so much, Travis, for having us on today. I
Yeah.
am Glennis with Property ID. I am the local area representative, and I've been in the real estate industry for 20 years. And I really appreciate Travis having Property ID on today. We are very happy to have a wonderful attorney, a California lawyer specializing in disclosure, speaking today. I'm going to introduce the fabulous Maylana, and I will let her take it away.
Nice. Good morning. How you doing?
Hi, Travis. Thank
Hi.
you.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. So
Um,
excited to see what you have to say today. I always love talking about disclosure stuff. As you do, I also get a lot of questions about disclosing. So let's get into this. So,
Excellent. Okay. And by the way, I do encourage questions as they arise. Interrupt me. I have ADD, so I interrupt people all the time, and it's not because I'm a jerk. It's because I have ADD and I can't keep the thought in my head long enough. So I appreciate it. If you have a question, ask it, because chances are other people have the same question or I was not clear. My name is Maylana. I have been a disclosure lawyer for 26 years here in California. I am the past president of the real estate section of the Bar Association here in the San Francisco Bay. I am part of Kids and Cancer Camp Agape, which is a 4-night camp for terminally ill children and their families. And before that, I did divorces in Beverly Hills, which was great money and bad work. Full disclosure, I am a lawyer. Property ID is my client, and Property ID is paying me to present to you today. So I just want to make that clear. So you're not paying for me to be here, but Property ID is paying for me to be here. So yay for you. Ha. Okay.
it's a big relief.
I know. $500 an hour is no fun. Okay. So a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away called Sacramento, the state of California decided that sellers who sell their homes must disclose all the bad news. They have to do it. The bad news that the seller knows about will be provided on the TDS, California Civil Code Section 1102. But the state of California also requires sellers to disclose natural hazards, California Civil Code Section 1103, raise your hand if you know if the house you're living in is in a liquefaction zone. You know, and you're in the business. Oh, look at you, Manny. Right on. Well, I stand corrected. There you go. So Manny knows. Oh, another one. Oppa! I'm sorry, I'm Greek. If you know, we all holler Oppa. Okay, so yes, it's not very many people that know if their property is in a liquefaction zone, and yet the law requires a seller to make this disclosure. I'll tell you from the perspective of a lawyer. Actually, not any lawyer, an ambulance chasing jerk asshole lawyer, which we will call Tony. That's my ex-husband. So from Tony's perspective, when somebody walks into his office, he's calculating, right? He's doing math. He's listening to you, and while he's listening to you as a potential client, he's doing math because he's looking at you as how much money are you worth it for my time, right? So as a buyer who is angry, and I'll share with you lawsuits in a minute, as a buyer who is unhappy now and is telling Tony a story, is talking, it's really important to recognize that if something is wrong or missing in the real estate transfer disclosure statement, Tony can sue on behalf of the buyer, cost to repair, cost to replace. That's it. So if the buyer comes into Tony's office and is very angry because the pool heater isn't working, and the pool guy who the buyer inherited from the seller tells the buyer, I've been telling that seller for 2 years that the pool heater is busted, the buyer is getting angry because this is something that was withheld in the disclosures. And so the buyer is telling Tony about the busted pool heater. Tony's like, what is that? $3,000, not worth my time, right? But if something is wrong or missing on a natural hazard disclosure report, the damages is the entire value of the property, because you can't fix the Rose Canyon fault or the Elsinore fault, and these run right through San Diego, right? You can't fix these. You can't fix expansive soils or the threatened California gnatcatcher that's going to restrict you from building an additional dwelling unit or adding on. All of that, right? You can't fix these things. So the damages is the entire value of the property, right? So Tony will tell the buyer, go home and print out. I am a lawyer and I like paper. Don't email me anything until I ask you to email it to me. Print out every single piece of paper of and concerning your purchase of this property. I want this in reverse chronological order. That means I want 3 quotes for fixing the busted pool heater on the top, every document, every disclosure, a snapshot of every text message, a copy of every post-it note, paper, paper, paper. And the last document I want to see is the advertisement you saw to purchase this property. I will build a case for you, buyer. And don't worry about your agent, buyer, because everybody gets invited to my litigation party and your agent has insurance, right? So that is what's going through Tony's mind, and Tony will build a case. So here, let me show you the law, and please, by all means, Google it. Everything I'm talking about, I encourage you to Google it. I'm going to send you stuff, but it's good for you to do a little bit of research on your own. Here is California Civil Code Section 1103. Now, this is like 50 pages, so I kind of condensed a little bit. But about 24 times in this code, it announces quite clearly who bears the burden of making the disclosures and who will assume the liability. It states a seller's agent. It doesn't say escrow officer. It doesn't say transaction coordinator. It doesn't say home warranty rep. It's very clear. Because nobody who chooses your natural hazard disclosure report can shield you from liability. Please note this. If you decide to move on in your career and you decide, I like ice cream and I want to open up an ice cream shop, a lawsuit will follow you wherever you go. So it is very important that you take control and make decisions in your transactions that can affect you in the future. A seller's agent for a seller of real property shall. That is the highest directive in the law. That means this is how it's going to happen. Disclose to any prospective buyer. Who is that? It's literally anybody in the world. Any prospective buyer could be sitting in Wyoming in her jammies looking at your listing on Brandon Circle in Carlsbad. You are required to provide her with the disclosures. But when we have become lazy in our practice and we let everybody stick their fingers into our transactions and do a bunch of bullshit that isn't in compliance with the law. When? Before the prospective buyer's execution of the contract. For the purpose of this subdivision, execution means the making or acceptance of an offer. That is when the natural hazard disclosure should be provided to a prospective buyer before they make their offers. I have a sad story to share with you. And I can share with you this agent's name because she's up here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and you may not know her. I hope you don't. Anyway, this agent named Sandra called me up, and she was crying on the phone. And she was saying, past tense, I had a $4 million listing in Alamo. Alamo is a very fancy little town up here in the East San Francisco Bay. She said, we were supposed to close escrow today. A couple of days ago, I got a call from the buyer's agent. It was a very strange call. She said, hey, are your sellers maybe rethinking selling their house? Maybe they want to back out. And Sandra told me that she said to the buyer's agent, why? What's wrong? Don't your buyers like the house? What's going on? And the buyer's agent said, oh, no. They love the house, but they hate each other. So they want to get a divorce. And so they were hoping maybe your sellers were having a change of heart. Maybe they didn't want to part with their beautiful home. Maybe we can amicably cancel this escrow. Sandra said, oh, no, sister. I'm sorry that your buyers want a divorce, and that's too bad. But let me tell you something. Your buyers, maybe they should have considered marriage counseling instead of wasting my seller's time in escrow. We are closing. Your buyers have removed their contingencies. We're good to go. I'm sorry. They can figure out what they're going to do with the house later. Sandra told me then she got an email from the buyer's agent. Thank you so much. We are excited and looking forward to closing escrow. However, in reviewing the documents, we've discovered that no natural hazard disclosure report was sent. Can you please send that over right away? So all these horrible vomit-inducing things are going through Sandra's mind, she told me, because and Sandra's a heavy hitter. She does a lot of business. She always uses this one fabulous escrow officer who always orders property ID disclosure reports for her, right? But this time, This time, the buyers had requested a different escrow company. There was a different escrow officer. And Sandra is so busy, she didn't even catch the fact that that escrow officer did not order the natural hazard disclosure report and as a practice won't, right? So Sandra knew what was coming. She ordered a property ID report. She sent it over to the buyer's agent. Sure enough, she got an email from the buyer's agent. Thank you so much for sending over the property ID report. However, it states in here that this property is not in the FEMA special flood hazard area, but my buyers want a home in the FEMA special flood hazard area. Therefore, the buyers are hereby invoking their 5-day right to terminate the contract. They are canceling this escrow. Thank you so much. Goodbye. And the sellers fired Sandra, as they should. Sandra screwed up. The problem with this scenario is that the law was designed to protect Sandra and her sellers, and yet it surprises me that so many agents do not follow the law. They wait until escrow has opened, right? So here it is. Let me share it with you again. Here it is. This is the law, and please feel free to Google it. The way Sandra should have done it. And I'm not going to tell you how to run your show, but the way proactive realtors do it, and this greatly minimizes cancellations before the close of escrow. They order a property ID report. They upload it to the MLS. Hey, all you prospective buyers in Wyoming and your jammies, please return these disclosures signed with your offers. Boom. Because that is the way the law was designed. It was designed that a buyer will submit their offer, having read the disclosures and signed off on them. And they will not have a 5-day right to terminate the contract ever because their offer was submitted with the disclosures. So here is another thing about the law that's very important to know. It really sucks that the seller's agent bears the burden of making the disclosures and assumes the liability. But there is an exception to this rule, and that is where you have exercised good faith in the selection of a natural hazard disclosure report, the liability will shift, right? But you have to exercise good faith. What's good faith? Good faith is the highest standard of honesty. Good faith is doing for your clients what you would do for yourself or your parent or your child, right? That is good faith. I have a girlfriend who moved to Texas. And since she moved to Texas, she has been sharing with me all the funny things that people in Texas do and say that we don't do or say here in California. And I call those her Texas isms, right? I'm going to share my favorite Texas ism with you. My girlfriend told me that in Texas, you can say bad things about people all day long, as long as you say, bless her heart. And I found this liberating. I mean, I was brought up that you don't have something nice to say, you say nothing, right? So for me, I was like, yay! And I'll give you an example so you can use it in your life. My cousin Nikki is the biggest tramp in San Jose. Bless her heart. See how that works? Takes the sting right out of the insult. So why am I sharing this with you? Because yes, I want to encourage you to have fun in your life and say what you want to say, but because I'm about to talk a little trash and you'll be fine. I assure you. Bless your heart. Okay, here we go. I am going to open my dark side file Actually, yeah, I'm going to open up my dark side file. Because we are talking about terms and conditions and good faith. There's a lot to be said here, bless their hearts, but I'm going to go right, since we just talked about the code and we are talking about good faith. In their terms and conditions, this company says that they have been asked to assist. Well, that doesn't sound so offensive. But if you look at it from the perspective of a lawyer, asked to assist, that is some passive-ass language deflecting liability back to you. It says that they've been asked to assist you in availing yourself protections under the law, of which they will do no such thing. Right? How about they were paid to provide a product that they will not stand behind? Bless their hearts. Is that good faith? I want to show you something else. This is right here. I'm going to show you this because this is a side-by-side comparison only about fire. This is a property in Pasadena. I will give you the address, 3800 Valley Lights Drive in Pasadena. This house burned to the ground. If the buyer of this property received this report, these are the disclosures the buyer received. If the buyer received this report, these are the disclosures they received. Note what is very interesting is that this property is not in a very high fire hazard severity zone, so it is not subject to AB 38. But property ID disclosed, okay, it's not in the very high fire under the CAL FIRE map, but it is within 300 feet. And based on other California maps, this property is in the high forestry and fire map. It is in the wildland urban interface, according to the U.S. Forest Service and the state of California. And it is in the high fire tree mortality zone. I'm going to show you one more comparison. And, bless their hearts, I'm just going to show you this one. So again, I have one property, two reports, the disclosures down the middle, side by side for this property. They got 3 wrong and did not bother to include 23 other disclosures. As a practice, they don't include these disclosures ever. If you were buying this house, which report would you want to receive in good faith? Bless their hearts.
It's funny that you bring that up. I was working with one of our agents who was their clients were thinking about offering on a Rancho Penasquitos property, which is just pretty much all high fire. And we're looking at this property on the fire map because they're like, we don't know if it's high fire. I'm like, well, let me show you. We'll go to the fire map. And the line was neighbor's house, yes, them, no, next door neighbor, no, and then everybody else, yes. So it literally went around these 2 houses on the street and kept going. So I'm like, look, it says it's not in the high fire, but this house is burning down. Like if the neighbor's house is, this one is too, probably. So, let them, they may get an NHD or something that says not high fire. They may not have to pay high fire insurance, but this home is in a hazard zone for sure,
Absolutely. And I often see properties that are straddled So, for example, the northern portion of the property is not in the very high fire hazard severity zone, but the southern portion of the property is in the very high fire hazard severity zone. Happens all the time. As far as that scenario that you described, where it goes right around this property, I don't know. The developer may have had, a very cozy relationship with the planning department.
This was tract housing, yeah. And everything on the other side of the street was red, and then everything behind it was not. But these two homes, for whatever reason, in that tract were not included with the neighbors or with the homes across the street. We do have one question. Can't this happen with any late disclosure, as the buyer always is allowed 5 days from the date they receive the disclosure, even if the contingency has been released?
No. So if Travis is selling his house and I'm buying it, and we are the day before the close of escrow, and I've released all my contingencies, and my agent tells me, oh, we never got the natural hazard disclosure report. I can cancel the day before the close of escrow. I can cancel the morning of the close of escrow if I did not get this. And that is the law, even if I have removed all of my contingencies. Did I answer your question?
Looks like there's a part two. Who does Carr suggest as the go-to for these reports? Could that recommendation be part of a defense if a lawsuit?
No. Why? Because CAR gets paid by all the disclosure companies to be on the drop-down menu, right? That's a fact. So yes, the one on the top probably paid the most to be on the top, right? And they decide, by the way, best value. Property ID also pays to be on the CAR drop-down menu, but Property ID invests a lot more money in research and development than buying a location on the CAR drop-down menu. And Property ID chose the words, the complete NHD, right? So CAR would not recommend a natural hazard disclosure report because CAR could be liable for making a bad recommendation. But they do allow everyone to buy a space in their hearts and be on the drop-down menu. So you cannot hope to deflect liability that the law has put on your shoulders. You can't do it. You can't say, oh, CAR says this is the best value and that's the one I chose. Oh, CAR says Property ID is the most complete and that's the one I chose. No, you are required to do your homework and choose the best one for you and your client. And that's not something you can shove onto anybody else. It's on you, boo. I'm sorry, but that's the fact. So I have a girlfriend who is a lawyer and she works for insurance companies. So when you get sued, she shows up to defend you. She shared with me a very scary statistic that I want to share with you. According to underwriters of E&O policies, 1 out of every 300 real estate transactions ends in a lawsuit. And that's approximately, right? 1 out of 300. That's a hell of a lot of lawsuits right there. 1 out of 300 transactions ends in lawsuit. What is the number one reason agents get sued? You know it.
Throw it in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Travis. Yes. The number one reason you will get sued as a realtor is non-disclosure. So let me ask you this question. Why would you ever let incomplete disclosures into your transactions, whether you represent buyer or seller? Why? Knowing that the number one reason you could be sued is non-disclosure. If you let the seller choose, okay? If you let the seller choose the NHD report, seller will always choose the cheapest. That's it. That's it. So if you tell seller, this is a property ID report. It's the most complete natural hazard disclosure report. They have been doing business. They have been disclosing natural hazards in California for 50 years. I met their lawyer, who has been their lawyer for 26 years. They have $20 million of E&O insurance that protects the buyer, the seller, the agents, the brokers, the escrow officer, and the transaction coordinator. In fact, it states it on their terms and conditions that these are the recipients of their report, and my brokerage is covered under their $20 million policy. If I were to sell my house, I would choose this one, seller. Or seller, you can choose this other NHD report and it's $20 cheaper. Seller's going to go, that one. I want that one. I want to save 20 bucks. Why? Because seller does not appreciate the fact that seller's choice to save 20 bucks can get your ass sued. They don't care because they sell their home 2 times in their lives, right? They don't get it. They can expose you to liability. Seller wants the cheapest. What does the buyer want?
The best.
The best. Opa, Travis, I will eat a Smartie in your honor because that is right. Every seller wants the best. And you and I both know very well that the buyer will not read this. They will not. They want the best, but they will not read this. Do you know when they're going to read this?
When they have a complaint.
Yes, you got it. See, you know the answers to all of these questions because you know what you're doing. The buyers
22 years, so I've seen a lot.
The buyer will only read this when they're mad at you, usually with the help of Tony. That's when they're going to read
That's when all of a sudden all the disclosures matter a lot.
That's it. That's the only time they're going to matter. Seller wants the cheapest. Buyer wants the best. Who is the plaintiff? Who does the suing? Buyer, right? And they
everybody gets sued.
You
the
got
attorneys
it.
like to go, everybody in the transaction, just come in here.
Yes.
So that we can serve you.
Yes, that's exactly
Inspectors, everybody.
Those ambulance chasing jerks, I know. I know how it's done. I've been married to 2 of them. Yes, I know. So the buyer is the plaintiff. So here is a quick tip on how not to get sued. When you write an offer, you tell the buyer, we are going to order this report because it is the most complete and it is the one I would want if I were buying this house, right? And when you're representing the seller, you say, this is the one we're going to get because if I were the seller, this is the one I would want. They have $20 million of E&O insurance and it's the most complete report. I've met their lawyer. They've been doing it for 50 years. And I know what's going to happen. Seller chose cheap ass crap NHD, right? And you are representing the buyer and you're like, what do? We asked for property ID in our offer, but the seller provided something else and they countered out. This is where I would email the buyer. My girlfriend Renee, who represents realtors when they're getting sued, told me emails from realtors are saving their asses right and left. in lawsuits. I would email. The E in your email is your evidence. I would email my buyer. Hello, my wonderful buyer. We asked for the property ID natural hazard disclosure report because it is the most complete. However, the sellers have provided cheap ass crap NHD. Since this is a seller's market and we don't want to upset the seller or the listing agent, I'm going to order the property ID report. It's $99. You can pay for it out of escrow, and do not worry, buyer. If you don't buy this house, I will cancel this report. Nobody has to pay for it. Okay. That email is evidence that you are going above and beyond for your buyer to make sure that you would get for your buyer everything your buyer is legally entitled to receive, right? And it's showing the buyer that you care about the buyer, right? And the buyer doesn't even have to pay for it until escrow closes, right?
And that would be acting in good faith, right?
That's exactly what I would do.
That's a definition.
Right.
So we got another question. In an active transaction, can a listing agent provide a second NHD? And two, can buyer's agent pay for their own NHD report when the listing agent provides an inferior report, which actually you just covered?
The answer is yes and yes. And the problem with having two NHDs, I showed you a comparison, which I have here on paper just so I don't bring it up again. But here is the problem, is when they contradict, right? So it just creates a lot more paperwork and a lot more work for you when you've got two natural hazard disclosure reports. One is a property ID that's right, and the other one is cheap ass crap and it's wrong, right? It's ideally you should have one. When you are representing the seller and when you are representing the buyer and the listing agent has said, you know, no, we already got the NHD report and it's going to be this one. And it's a buyer's market. Again, you can go back to your buyer and say, look, we're going to play nice and I'm just going to order the report for you. Or you can play hardball, which is something I love and I enjoy. And I'll be happy to email you this addendum. This addendum says this. Hello, listing agent. We have requested in the offer the property ID natural hazard disclosure report. However, you have insisted on providing this other report, which we feel is incomplete. Please sign this addendum, listing agent, that you will assume all liability for all the disclosures that were not included in that report that you are insisting on using that would have been included in the property ID report. No agent in their right mind would sign that addendum. Absolutely not. I know that you don't know that agents get sued every day. Agents don't skip around the grocery store saying, hey, everybody, guess what? I'm getting sued. List your house with me. They don't do that, right? They don't. And they certainly don't show up at the marketing meetings and say, hey, did you hear I'm getting sued? I have a directory of lawsuits here. In every single one of these lawsuits, it was a matter of non-disclosure and agents got sued. I have 262 lawsuits on this list and counting. But we don't have time to go over all of these. We should go over a couple that I'm sure you may have already heard about. The first one is Easton versus Strasburger. This is the case that made law, that buyers are legally entitled to receive all facts materially affecting the value or desirability of the property. What the hell is that? What's desirability? I'll give you an example. Today for lunch, I will desire fish tacos. What do you desire for lunch, right? Desirability means I want, I don't want. And a buyer can sue you for that. And do they? Of course they do. Look at the next lawsuit on the list. Cleckley versus Coldwell Banker. There was nothing wrong with this property. Nothing. But after the close of escrow, a neighbor came over and knocked on the buyer's door and said, hey, welcome to that neighborhood. I'm Karen. I live over there. Did you know that everybody on your side of the street is in this local landslide zone? Yeah, you are. But not me. I live over there. Did they tell you? Oh, they were supposed to tell you that. So the buyer said, wow, I never would have desired to buy a property in a local landslide zone. Buyers sued and got $1 million for I don't want.
I love that you bring that one up because I have a quick story on that too with neighbors. Neighbors can cause lawsuits. And I didn't get in a lawsuit. However, I took a listing on a house. Everything was good. The home was 4 years old, right? And I sold the house. Disclosures came back, from the sellers are like, no, no problem, no problem, no problem, all the way through. Neighbor right next door calls me after it closes and says, I want to sell my house. Awesome. I go over there. I'm talking to them and they're like, hey, did they tell you about that massive leak they had from the upstairs bathroom? I'm like, no, they did not, actually. They're like, oh, yeah, it was a whole thing. He's like, within the first year of the house, the bathroom sprung a leak upstairs and caved in the whole ceiling of the downstairs living room. And the builder had to come out and there's a whole bunch of warranty work and all this stuff. And I'm like, holy shit. I hope that that person does not talk to you and I want to sell your house very fast. So the buyer of the next door neighbor. So it's just, you never know what the neighbors are going to say. Did they dislike this owner? It could be so many things. So, I like to bring up stories like that when I'm at listing appointments, be like, this is why you need to disclose everything to me and tell me everything about this house right now. Because your neighbor's going to tell on you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good way to go about it. And I'm going to share another lawsuit with you. Here we go. This one. Thomas Massari versus Kirk Swazinski. So Thomas Massari bought a house. He received a natural hazard disclosure report from this NHD. It was wrong. He sued the listing agent, Kirk Swazinski of Century 21, Doug Anderson. Century 21, Doug Anderson, Kirk Swazinski, upon receiving the summons, picked up the phone and called the disclosure rep for this company who has great legs and brings stale Christmas cookies to him. And he said, hey, I do a lot of business and I give you all my business, but I'm getting sued because your report was wrong. So here's what you need to do now. You need to call the attorney who is representing the buyer who is suing me, and you need to tell him that they need to sue you because you're the one who did the disclosure report. And you're the one who brags that you have $60 million of E&O insurance. And you need to get this lawyer off my ass because I use you so that I don't have to have liability. And the lovely rep, who I'm sure is just, trying to feed her kids and pay her mortgage like all the rest of us, said, "Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, let me call you back." Well, Kirk Swazinski never heard from her ever again. And I know this because Kirk Swazinski's lawyer, Jason Wallach, called me. And he said, "Hey, I know that you're the attorney for that disclosure company, Property ID. Can you send me a report so I can see what you would have disclosed in your report for this property?" I said, "Well, I mean, I don't have the authority to give out free stuff, but why don't you order it and you pay for it, and then you can call me and we could talk about it." So he bought a property ID report, and then when he received it, he filed a cross complaint against this disclosure company. And when this disclosure company was, answering back to the listing agent, Kirk Swazinski, they claimed agents are barred from recovery and not covered under any insurance policy. And in fact, because this company is owned by a very large title company, the $60 million of insurance actually is for title, not for their NHD. So here is another lawsuit, and this is a really frightening story that could have been easily deflected. A lady by the name of Miss Sohei bought a house. When she bought the house, she received a property ID report. 2 years later, she decided to sell her house. She retained the services of Peter Narodny from the real estate brokerage Frank Howard Allen, and that brokerage doesn't exist anymore. Peter Narodny ordered a report from this company, which does not exist anymore. A lady by the name of Elaine Bandolin bought the house. 9 months after the close of escrow, she filed this lawsuit against the seller, the listing agent, and the listing brokerage for non-disclosure. Her lawyer subpoenaed the transaction file from 2 years ago and discovered a very complete property ID report in it. She filed an amended complaint and said everything, every disclosure that the seller received when she bought the house, including every disclosure in the property ID report, constituted seller's actual knowledge. And the fact that the seller provided a natural hazard disclosure report done by a company known to be less inclusive than property ID, this is fraud by concealment. This case settled. Miss Bandolin got all her money back, and she still owns the house. One more lawsuit. Actually, let me just tell you one quick thing here. Had Peter Narodny asked Miss Sohei, "Hey, Miss Sohei, you bought the house 2 years ago. Would you mind forwarding me the disclosures you received when you bought the house?" Boom, included that as a disclosure package. None of this would have happened. None of it, right? Because he is including every disclosure the seller received when she bought the house. Here is one more lawsuit. It is Field versus Century 21 Clouden Forness. You may know that name, right? They I think, I don't know that brokerage exists anymore, but they were right there in San Diego. This is an important case because the judge ruled when an agent makes a statement, not knowing if the statement is true, the statement is false, and that's fraud. I am sharing this case with you because I have heard coming out of the mouths of realtors, a buyer for this property on Cebu Place in Carlsbad. Don't worry about the very high fire hazard severity zone. All of California is in a very high fire hazard severity zone. Is that true? Say no. No, that's not true. Don't say silly things like that. And I hear this one too. Oh, buyer, don't worry about the Rose Canyon Fault or the Elsinore Fault. All of California is in an earthquake fault zone. Is that true? Say no. No, don't say silly things like that. This is what I would do. I would email this report to the buyer. What does the E in email stand for?
Electronic.
No. No, give me back those Smarties, Travis. No, the E in your email is your evidence. Buyers will never remember conversations they had with you when they are heavily represented by Tony. They will only remember the conversations they had with you the way Tony tells them to remember that conversation. Your email is your evidence, and it will save your ass over and over and over again. I would, and by the way, if you enter your email address in the chat, I will email you. I'm going to email you information about fire, and I'm going to email you this wording. Hello, my wonderful buyer. Attached is the natural hazard disclosure report. Please read it very carefully, buyer. If you have any questions about anything in this report, you can chat with them right from this report. You can call them, but the best way to have all of your questions answered legally, buyer, is for you to email me your questions. I will forward them to a disclosure lawyer for no charge. We will have all the answers in writing. That email is evidence of your fiduciary duty. That email is evidence that you have provided complete disclosures. That email is evidence that you have reminded them this is really important and you need to read it. They're not going to read it. And it's evidence that you have directed them to me. By the way, I wrote this report. I am the most qualified to explain it, right? Not you. And you shouldn't explain things you didn't write. You should always get whoever prepared or wrote it. They are the ones who must explain it, not you. The last thing I will share with you is this. If you want property ID, you must instruct your transaction coordinator or your escrow officer to use what you want, because they're just doing their jobs and they think they're doing you a favor by ordering whomever they choose. But it's up to you. And I invite you, I welcome you, I encourage you. You can call me, you can text me, you can email me, but please do not call me on your divorces. There's a whole bunch of questions here. Maybe
We've
Travis.
gone over quite a few. We got one that says, is the NHD property report a public record? Is this available free of charge at California State Public Record website? If so, what's the address?
No.
And also don't always think free. Think best.
Yeah.
I understand the listing agent is fully responsible for finding, sharing all disclosures. My question is, where is who has the complete list of disclosures? Do you offer a complete list? I go off the one in CAR. They do provide, here's the property type, the type of sale, so on and so forth. And then they've got like a little matrix of like what you need to add in. And that's how my checklist is designed. Do you have something?
Okay. Well, the answer is you don't have avalanche in San Diego. So that's irrelevant to you, right? in Lake Tahoe, they don't have tsunami. That's not relevant to them. They have siege because if the lake during a seismic activity, the lake can, swish like a bathtub, right? So the list of disclosures that property ID provides is in the thousands, depending on where you are, right? So if you're on the coast, you're going to see tsunami. You have threatened California gnatcatcher. In the Central Valley, they have something that's very significant, and that's called subsidence. That's the gradual settling of the Earth's surface. You have expansive soils in your area. So, I mean, it's not something that property ID would provide because I'm sure you're very lovely, but you could hand that right over to a competitor of property ID. So it's not something I'm going to give freely. But when you order a property ID report, you have to feel confident that the disclosures provided are relevant and of and concerning only this property. And by the way, if you start talking about all these, I am a natural hazard disclosure expert. You are an expert in selling real estate. Don't do my job and I won't do your job. So it's best that you do what you do and let everybody else do their jobs, right? I mean, that's a
Know your
fact.
role. Yep.
Stay in your lane because you don't want to get sued for being a natural hazard disclosure expert unless you are one, right? And
Yeah.
you've got, insurance that's gonna cover you.
Let's see. So that was in the Q&A. Wow, there is a lot. Lots of thank yous. Great presentation.
Oh, you're so lovely. Thank
See
you.
anything, bless your heart.
I love you. Thank you. That was so well done. I appreciate that. I'm actually trying to copy the email addresses in the
okay.
Yeah, so if I'm gonna stay for just a minute, unless
If you
Glenia's
want, we can provide you a list of who was on if you want to send stuff out.
Oh, I would love
That might
that.
be a little easier. Then everybody can have some goodies for attending.
Yeah, and they can have a direct connection with me anytime.
Yeah. So if we listen to get to NHG and the buyers want their own, it's okay, we did that one. Yeah, order it up. So I think an important thing to remember here is it's actually buyer's choice, right? Everything that you're writing in the contract is buyer's choice, and obviously it gets countered back. Oh, well, we're going to use this escrow company or whatever. Essentially, you're coming to an agreement at that point. So if the listing agent counters it back and says, no, we want to use this and it's a hot property, you don't want to cause waves, you want to get into the property, spend the $99 or just see if the buyer wants to, pay for a better report or whatever it is that you're negotiating out, just think about CYA all the time, and
Absolutely.
protecting the buyer as much as possible, just because the seller has a relationship with whatever companies they're trying to throw into the contract doesn't mean that the buyer necessarily agrees. They just want the house. And they're like, whatever, whatever, whatever. But it's up to you as the expert, in the business to say, look, I have knowledge that this isn't that good or that isn't that good or we should get this instead, and do that on your own. They're waving. Yeah, I don't want to get into a whole rant, but yeah. So don't be afraid to, go ahead and step out of that and say, look, we should go ahead and go over here.
There is one more thing I want to point out, just one more thing, because you reminded me, Travis, and you're absolutely right. When somebody is saying we want to go with this company because we have a relationship with this company, let me tell you something. They don't love each other. It's money. And
Yep.
that's it. It's money.
That's all it is.
There are a lot of different like title companies. They own their own NHD. There are insurance companies that encourage the use of one NHD over another because they're getting paid, right? That's it. They're not looking out for you and your liability because it's very difficult to understand something when your wallet depends on you not understanding it. You need to look out for you, right? I know that there is one insurance company that actually promotes the use of one NHD company. They used to promote this one, and I'm going to show you. They used to recommend this one. And this company just announced that they've made the difficult decision to close their doors. Who cares? Another one bites the dust, okay? Another bad NHD company has closed its doors. But here is the problem. There were companies who were benefiting from that NHD company paying them. And if you ever had that NHD report in your transaction and there's a problem, and the buyer finds out from the neighbor, oh yeah, don't you know the Rose Canyon fault runs right down the street? And the buyer comes back and says, why didn't you tell me this? And you say, oh yeah, you need to call the NHD company. The NHD company doesn't exist anymore, right? And you think that insurance company is publicizing, oh, we screwed up by telling you no. So you look out for you.
Yep. Got one other one real quick. In addition to NHD report, do you suggest providing TDS SPQ within the MLS? That's actually the difference I see between Northern Cal and Southern Cal is Northern Cal generally provides all disclosures up front prior to the acceptance. And then Southern Cal, we don't really have that practice for whatever reason. It's actually a good practice to do that, especially with the TDS law, because, sometimes we're looking at a non-contingent offer or something really, trimmed down timelines, and TDS law, it should be before acceptance if you really truly want a non-contingent offer. So, because they, just like the NHD, they could back out if it's a late disclosure on TDS. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not that anybody does it right or wrong, but in Northern California, an entire disclosure packet is given to the buyer's agents. And in fact, buyer's agents know this is coming. So they're not going to waste the seller's time. And certainly they're not going to waste their own time in getting disclosures if their buyer isn't, ready. So listing agents will say, we are only interested in serious buyers, and we will give the disclosures to serious buyers up front, or they will just put it on the MLS. Here's the thing though. You need to be careful because your seller may not want to include the TDS in the MLS. So you just need to let your seller know. I'm going to upload a lot of the disclosures. We can hang on to the TDS if you would rather and give it, only to serious buyers. But it's actually the best practice for buyers to have signed off on all the disclosures, remove all their contingencies when they submit their offers. This way we will have a very slim chance of cancellation. So it's just
yeah. And you're not asking them to release the investigation part, just the seller disclosures part. It's just that one part of the investigations. So you're not saying, no, you can't do a home inspection. You're saying you've read the disclosures and understand them, and you're agreeing. One last one, and then I guess we can wrap up because this is a fun one. What are our post-closing responsibility do we have to either party we represented when we are told something about a home or neighborhood after close of escrow? Can we stay silent? Do we still have obligations?
after the close of escrow. Who gives a rat's ass? Escrow has closed, you're done. So if a spaceship landed on the corner of, First and Main 2 days before the close of escrow, and there was a fabulous article written about it, I would email that to the buyer's agent if I'm the listing agent, or I would email it to the buyer if I'm the buyer's agent, and I'd say, hey, a UFO landed on the intersection of First and Main, which is right around the block. Did you see this article? It's interesting. Boom, you have disclosed it. But if a UFO lands at the intersection of First and Main, after escrow has closed, you had no actual knowledge of it before the close of escrow. You have no obligation to disclose anything like that.
The way I see it is agency is terminated at close of escrow, so you don't have an obligation at that point to go and knock on the previous seller's door, which is now the buyer's home, and say, hey, I just found out this thing and I want to go ahead and entice you to sue me now. So
Well, it might be a good way to keep contact with that buyer for future when they want to sell their house, because they
yeah.
may want to sell it and be like, oh my gosh, I heard a UFO landed. You want to list your house?
So, all right, cool. Well, this was fun. Looks like we had a ton of questions come in. Hopefully we covered most of them. If not, I am, hopefully everybody's okay with that. I'm going to provide the attendee list over so she can email you over some goodies as well as her contact. And then, of course, this was put on by Property ID. And if you have any questions, you can always contact Glennis. She is our rep over there. If you need that contact, actually, we'll throw that in the back office so everybody can get it easily. And that's about all I have there. So I appreciate you coming on.
It was my pleasure. Anytime. And I hope that I can be there. Well, you guys you only do virtual, but if you ever do an in-person meeting, I'd love to come to San Diego.
It's a little easier because we're so spread out, because we have agents up north too, and Central Valley and everywhere. But to get 60 people together to come on to a meeting it's much easier if we do them online. So
well, congratulations.
Okay.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Layla.
Thanks a lot. All right.
Bye.
Everybody have a good day.
I hope I see y'all again. Bye, Travis. Thank you.
Bye. See you later.